thinking you could just jot your exit ticket answers down in the chat window, and then we could look at those later. So, so the other thing we wanted to announce is that hopefully we're going to have continued meetings. That's one thing Jane Sims had asked us to sort of plug, that continued meetings around the topic of active learning. And there's a new technology-enhanced classroom or meeting space being designed on the first floor in Science 1206 that will really be set up to do a lot of active learning using like monitors on the wall and whiteboards and small group tables and workstations. So she's hoping people this year, once it's finished in the next couple of weeks, will be able to bring a class down there and try something out in that environment if you're interested. So she wanted us to make sure to mention that. I think we're going to get started, and our hope is that you'll get a taste of a few different types of active learning things that you can do in your classroom. So I'm going to let Donna start.
Okay, so we're going to do just a short little activity with Zoom. Is there at least one person at each table set that's in Zoom? Can I get a nod for that? Any table that has not been able to get at least one computer in Zoom? Okay, so we're going to go to the whiteboard feature in Zoom.
So go to the share screen button, and then that'll bring up this thing called whiteboard.
So down here where the share screen button is,
Yep, click on that.
and then select whiteboard. So you have two. So we have low-tech whiteboards that we'll use later, and we're going to just demonstrate a little bit with Zoom. Okay, so what we'd like to do is we'd like to get some information from you first to start off with. We'd like to know what active learning strategies do you currently use or are you familiar with in your classroom. So this is kind of like a brainstorming session, and you can just click your mouse and type. So for your table set, add to the whiteboard, and then we'll be able to see everybody's thoughts and ideas. So we're going to give you
5 minutes.
5 minutes. We've got a timer up here.
And if you're having trouble with the Zoom whiteboard, go ahead and switch to the physical whiteboards on your table. I'm not sure if I'm having everything.
Do you know why it says that Eric is talking? Why is Eric showing us in our room?
Oh, brainstorm on the whiteboard.
This is the machine.
Just go ahead. That's why we have these start back up too. So.
The camera's
Right. Yeah, I would say brainstorm on the whiteboard on your table. You got markers, you got erasers.
like it's not.
And then we'll just share kind of across
To our.
You're
not set as a producer.
Yeah. Don't let the
shouldn't have to be.
We need you to go and work on the whiteboard. Okay.
Why does it say Eric is talking?
She's Eric.
He's an artist. This machine is Eric recording. Oh, yeah, but when we click up there in our whiteboard, it won't let us type.
You have just active learning in your class. Everybody else is
They
able to type
have
right
to be
now. Yeah, but everyone else is typing right now. I feel like only one table is able to type. Yeah, well, like, hey, yeah, no, I we were told everybody can participate on the whiteboard, but it's not working. I'm all about reverse action. I'm not copying whatever. Okay, take about 2 more minutes to brainstorm some ideas. either on the Zoom whiteboard or on your physical whiteboards.
Active learning strategies you already
Oh.
And then you can click on the whiteboard. Okay. And you can choose the board.
No, that's okay.
Right. Yep. We're all moving. It's up.
They're not lower.
1 more minute. What active learning strategies are you employing? What have you used? Okay, so now I'd like to do, you can see some of the ideas that are up on the screen that people have entered in the Zoom interface. You also have some other great ideas perhaps on your whiteboards, those of you who utilize those. What I'd like you to do now is I'd like each table to pick one. One that is maybe your go-to or one that you would like to highlight. You're going to pick one, and then you're going to very briefly share what you find, awesome about that plan or about that active learning strategy. Okay, so you're going to pick one. We're going to give you about 1 minute to share out. So we'll give you about a minute to pick one, and then what you find most intriguing or most beneficial about that. Not looking for a big example, because you're only going to have about 30 seconds to share. Okay, so 1 minute to select one, go.
Do we have to think pair share group? Do that, whatever that is.
Yeah.
That's going to be one of our activities.
Oh, yes. Yeah, let's do
Yeah. I like it.
Okay, so that's been your minute. So if we could all come together for just a moment. So what we've tried to do already is model some of the strategies you can utilize. Some find that having a timer is very helpful to kind of keep you on task. We have a robust number of activities that we wanted to share with you, but we knew we couldn't fit everything in. And so we had to plan, and we've got certain times that we've got to stay in. That's one thing that people sometimes struggle with is, oh, there's all these great ideas, but if I put it into my class, it runs away with time, and then I find I don't get through my content. It does not need to be that way. There are so many active engagement strategies that should fit very seamlessly into your instruction and not detract from the time with your students, but actually enhance and well utilize that time. And so for some, they find a timer to be really helpful to keep everybody on task. If you've got a very active, chatty class, which is wonderful, that can be one way to kind of keep them on task. Also, this idea that we've done here is we wanted to see ideas that you would have. We kind of walked around, we're kind of like eavesdropping on different conversations, looking at your boards, looking at what's on the screen, so we can kind of get an idea of what you're coming in with. So that's a little bit of pre-assessment for our students as they enter, for you to see if the activities we have planned for you today are going to meet your needs, because we have a couple that we can shift if need be. And so we're trying to demonstrate some of the things that you can consider in your active learning strategies with your students. So now we're going to have just a very brief time for your groups to share, each group to share an idea. It may be something that you find really exciting or rich or engaging, or why it's the one that you selected to share out with your group. And we'll give each group about 30 seconds, so we want it to be really brief, even though you probably got a lot of great information to share.
And I would just add, if you hear anything that you think sounds really intriguing, put it on the exit ticket and say, I would like to learn more about that, because then that can be a topic we talk about in a later session throughout the school year.
Right.
Cool.
All right, which table would like to start?
I'll start.
Wonderful.
Exercise lesson, we did collaborative testing for more formative learning. So like short 5-point quiz. Each one will take the quiz, and then each number you would kind of, 1 minute for each number question. And then once they're done, so they're done in 5 minutes, and then they would be grouped into threes, and then they would compare their answers. And retake the same quiz, make sure that after they have discussed that, so we gave them 2 minutes to discuss the 5-point quiz, and then they will answer it again. So it's more informative and collaborative, and when you think it through on why did the answer B, why did you answer C, what was the term?
Wonderful. Thanks. Another. Who's next? Yes, thank you.
So we chose games just because games have been on like the teacher side of it, really a useful creative tool to expand outside of like how else can we teach this subject or this subject. And then for the students, it's something that they really weren't expecting. It's like another way of, to connect all the other information that they're getting. So, and plus they're really fun,
Wonderful.
So, and then they actually get to move around.
Excellent. Some good components. Yes.
Don and I both use 1 minute papers or 1 minute writings. We have a question, and it's really pretty simple. Write out your response to this question. One thing that I found interesting, sometimes I ask them, what's the most interesting thing you've learned today? And then the other was, what's the most important thing you've learned? Sometimes, very separate, and I never know what they consider the most interesting.
Excellent. Nice.
Now, we'll use collaborative list making. So in the classroom, we actually have white sheets around the wall and markers and stuff, and there are certain key questions, and they have to go around and respond to that question or identify something, and then we look at it as a group.
Wonderful. A few more tables?
We, social workers here, we love role plays. It's a way to actually simulate skills that they learn, because these are tools or things that of course we're using in their actual profession. So it's a way for us to instantly or for students to demonstrate to us that they understand the concepts.
Excellent. A few more tables? Yes.
We talked about the concept of extending answers. So when we're questioning in class, asking for extensions, summaries, someone to repeat, another student to repeat an answer or their version of an answer, perhaps more deeply, another student to say the same information in the way they think about it as a summary. So rather than stopping questioning and answering at a single answer, asking essentially for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different students to extend that answer or response in their own thinking, so that everyone hears it in different ways, hears the concept in different ways.
Wonderful. Wonderful list. A couple more tables?
We chose simulation, and we use simulation both in
she works in health information, HIAM, and I work in nursing. So we both use it to have application of gain knowledge. So whether it be laws and regulations or procedures or best practice or policy or skills, it's the application of those skills.
Very nice.
Kind of a mixed bag of different professions, but we saw that most of us use case studies. And for general chemistry, we decided we needed to include ethics in the lab. And I thought, oh, reading a case study is going to be kind of boring. So we made it into a script. We're going to have the students act it out and then talk about what they feel and the ethics behind it. And so I haven't tried it yet, but that was another approach to how to do a case study instead of just reading and then discussing.
Excellent. And our online users, do we have any feedback?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, that was a really robust list of ideas, and I was checking some of those away thinking, ooh, I like that. And so that time to share, I think, is always a great time of adding to your own toolbox, and I thank you for adding to mine. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is a strategy that Jane Sims actually shared with me at the start of last academic year, and it's kind of like a lottery ticket meets group quiz is how I use it in my class. So at your table, you have your lottery ticket. Now, we all know that they just had the big winner, so the jackpot is really low right now, okay? And you should also have a sheet of about a quarter length long. So just to kind of get you, for you to understand, down at the very bottom, there's a number displayed. It's like B0, 23, 24, 25, 26. That's the code number that tells me where the correct answers are located. So there are 4 different versions in this room. So if you're thinking of overhearing the neighbors at your next table for their answer, it's not going to work, okay, which is kind of important. So I have a question here. Before you start, so I know you're anxious to scratch your lottery ticket, but before you do, I just want to talk to you about it. So this really works best when you want to see what incorrect answers are selected. So if I were just going to be asking, you know, a very brief, low-level thinking question, this would not be ideal. This is great when you want to see the incorrect answers, that there is something that might draw students to that, like a common misperception or a common mistake that students might make. Or you're trying to really get down to the nitty-gritty between a couple different concepts in your class. Because what this allows you to do is to see the order of what incorrect answers potentially might be selected before the correct answer. So in a moment, you're going to scratch off, or I'll be doing question number 1, you're going to scratch off the letter that you think corresponds to the correct answer. And I picked math because it's everybody's favorite, right? At least this table here, heard him saying that lovely word this morning. I'm so excited. But here's the important part. So in this question, what I did is I thought of, I know you're all excited, you're starting to do the math. Hang on just a minute. So you're starting, what I did, there's no name on this, so it's okay. So what you need to do when you're creating this is think, what are the common mistakes that I want to know if my students are making, so that I get that feedback. So depending on which form you have, if you pick a certain number, then I'm going to know right away when I get your papers back which mistake you're making, what concept is not clear, and then I can adjust my lesson to cover that. So you're going to scratch off, and if this was in my class, I do this in groups. If you get the correct answer right the first time, woohoo, there's going to be a teeny tiny star that's kind of center-ish. You're going to have to scratch off most of the actual choice. You get 4 points. If you scratch it off and you don't see anything there, if it's just blank, it's the wrong answer. So you go back to talking with your group. Okay, what did we do wrong? You make your second choice. If you see the star there, you now go from 4 points to 2 points. If you don't see the star, you've selected 2 incorrect choices, okay? You've made probably the 2 most common misconceptions, miscalculations, errors in your work. And if you take the 3rd choice, now you're down to just 2 to scratch, you got a 50-50 here. If you scratch and it's not, it is the right answer, you get 1 point. If it's not, then okay, you know where the right answer is, it's the last one. So the nice thing is the students get the feedback right away. They know when they walk out what their quiz score is. And it takes that level of group quizzes, which I use in my class, to another level because I know something of the mistakes they're making along the way. And that's the feedback that's really important, okay? So what I'd like you to do is go ahead and do the math calculation. I know you're feeling really sharp this morning. And scratch with the side of your nail or cap of a marker. Make sure you do just question number 1. What you think the correct answer is. So scratch that off. If your answer is not listed there, then that tells you try again. Keep working with your group. So if you get it wrong, your group really needs to have a discussion about what did we do? What's the mistake? Did you get your math right? You got your math right. No, this was just so I would put my papers together. So it's question number 1. This is question number 1. Question number 1. The number off to the side, the 23, 24, 25, 26, that was just my thing to make sure I got the right answer sheet with the right get that form. Okay.
Those are
So a couple thoughts for you. I had a couple questions. I think everybody's got their answer. And our online people, I'm sorry you can't quite see the form, but Kathy, is she our one? Kathy, I'd be happy to meet you at Einstein's and show you. So a couple thoughts for you. I use group quizzes in my class. I like them. Students feel less threatened by that. I tend to give what I call my meaty, grizzly questions in my group quizzes, ones they really have to sink their teeth into and chew on. Things that if you can make it through my group quizzes, you should be, if you participated well in the group quiz format, you should be well prepared for the exams because they are usually multi-step, pretty encompassing questions. The IPAT questions, I have them work in teams. I've chosen just to label my forms with color, and then I have team numbers. So I have like team 1 in blue, team 2 in red, and that way I can shake it up by color or by number. And I just do a PowerPoint screen slide, and I say, here's what today's teams are, so that when I pass these cards out, the next time I use them, there is no grade name distributed to somebody else, because I think it's important to keep grades private. So it might just say team 1, but nobody's going to remember who was team 1 last time and see what the different scores were. Okay? So that's where I mix them up, my teams. Just when they think they know who their team members are going to be, I do something different. I have like little tiddlywinks, if you will, for those of you who know what tiddlywinks are. They're just little plastic circles, different colors. And when they come in, I tell them to pick one, and I'll put all the reds together, all the blues together, and just when I have that figured out, then I say, okay, you need to meet with people that are of a different color. So I always, and it's a great way, like if I need to mix these two gentlemen into different teams, if they're, usually they don't work well together, I just look at what color circle they have, and then I create the teams based off of that when I'm doing teamwork in my class. But for the IFAT, I need to remember who is in those teams, so I have them pre-assigned. So one of the things that I do to pre-assign teams ahead of time sometimes is I will go into any kind of reading assessment that I might have, where they've maybe done a short little, low-level quiz in Blackboard, or I use my math lab, a Pearson product, who's done that, or maybe I have an article that they're supposed to read. So I look to see who has completed that work. And I used to make my groups very heterogeneous, and in the whole flipping thing that has not worked well. And I've gone to homogeneous grouping, and that's worked much better. So I will sort in Blackboard by scores or by time completed, because then I usually have people who are like-minded, and I found that that has worked beautifully. It went against everything that I thought is my teaching philosophy, to have people in homogeneous groups. It just did not feel comfortable. But I tried it once after talking with a faculty member, and it was like, that's the answer. And students quickly know, these are the ones that got their work done really early, and you two ladies back there, you're grouped together because you're the two that didn't do the assignment, and you're like, oh, dang. And, you don't tell them, but they figure it out right away. And then what happens? Then, we find out that, little Miss Kalan there is actually now starting to do her work, because she doesn't want to get stuck in a group where none of them are prepared. And that's been fun. So that sorting in Blackboard in the grade assignment column, that's a really handy way to form groups. Okay, but for the IFAT, I just have it up on a PowerPoint slide, and that way I've got my records later and I can see who's completed that. Any questions on the IFAT? It's not something that I do all the time. It's like a sprinkle, if you will, and a cupcake in my classroom. It just kind of adds a little bit of flair to a class, but students love them. The thrill of scratching off that little thing, they've loved it, and it's been delightfully wonderful to see. So, questions? Talk to Jane Sims. She ordered, because they had to do like a big order, and so she just gave me a set. So you get a sheet that says where the correct answers are for each version. So I make up a question, and then I copy it 4 times, and then I just change where the correct answer is. And then sometimes I'll change some of the incorrect answers so that we don't have 3 people always saying the same. Or just when they're starting to listen, like, oh, the answer was 30, then I'll change one number and yours, the correct answer will be 6, one of the other incorrect answers. So it takes a little bit of time to set up, but it's such a quick, efficient tool in the classroom, and that's what I like. I like knowing what errors did you make. Because when I do group quizzes or other kinds of formative assessments, I don't always get to see what the mistakes were. And so then we can hit that and do that discussion. Okay. Questions? Super. All right.
All right. I'm going to talk a little bit about a type of activity I like to use, which is called a jigsaw. And many of you might have used it. But the point of a jigsaw is to do small group work, where a group might work on a problem. I teach physics, so maybe they're working on a physics problem, or maybe they're doing a question before a test. So they'll do jigsaw or test reviews. So they're going to review some test question. And then you rearrange the groups, and each member of the original group becomes the expert on that question or that problem, and they're responsible for presenting it in the new group. So it's a way of making sure every member of the group is equally invested and equally active in the first discussion, because they know they're going to have to be the expert on that when they go into the second group discussion. So that's why I really like it. It keeps everybody engaged, and then they have to be able to talk about it. So we're going to try it here. Everybody at your tables, there's a packet of papers that's paper clipped together. There's 1 sheet of paper for everybody at the table. There's 4 in each packet. So if there's more than, there's only 2 of you, just pick any sheet. So everybody needs to have 1 in front of them. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to Google the answer to your question. And these are things that I know nothing about either until recently. So I figured this is something right about. Okay, so I'm going to start a timer. So you've got about 3 minutes to Google the answer to your question and write it on your sheet of paper. Remember, you're the expert on this question. Yes. So everybody has a different question.
Should you raise the periods of
What is it? I don't sound like my, what do you want? Okay, got about another minute. Okay, finish up with your group members. Make sure you jotted down the answers. All right. Now, if this were a class I was doing, they might have been working on a problem for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I would also have made sure that groups are kind of put together, but I know faculty don't like to get up and move once you're seated. So I would have probably made sure we had 4 people at every table we could, and then we'd have a little bit. So we might have a little bit of rearranging here in a second. But I am going to make you move now to finish this. I would like, if you have the letter A at the bottom, second group A, gather kind of in this area around these tables. If you have the letter B, we're going to kind of gather in this area. If you have the letter C at the bottom, we're going to gather these 2 tables together around these 2. And the letter D, we're going to gather around these. Okay? So meet your new group members. So all the A's are in the front, B's are kind of in here, C's are kind of in here, just pull up your chairs, and D's are kind of in here. Yeah. Pull up the chairs. And on the screen, so give your next instruction.
I've actually thought about it. There should be fossils.
Once you've made your introductions and pulled up chairs, this is your group's task. You must discuss in your group what should you know if you want a bearded dragon for a pet. You are all experts on something, so share that and answer the question. And if I were doing this in the class, I would have you be taking notes and turn something in to me at the end.
Here's some more chairs.
Go ahead and start.
Yes. In captivity. Research also found out also that the mean size and active device use is actually shorter than the
And so now, what you know what they and they don't really need what lifespan. The way that you do that is you can have
That's exactly I use. That's why my daughter didn't get another dog. So
I don't know about that. I guess we're modeling a lot like
I'll drive.
But they do. And then they also and that system started the vitamin.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was up that way. Yeah, so that's what they do. You have your I think so. Are there any questions? I can answer about the Jigsaw and how it can be used in the classroom. If I'm doing it on a test review day, that's not what I'm doing that day. It's not like the time each group is responsible for three questions, and then they come together and they share. It's a problem solving session. I might do something like that in the class period. So a group will solve a big problem for 5 or 10 minutes, and then they'll meet another group, and then they'll spend 20 minutes maybe sharing this support. No, no. So what physics things tend to be firmly right or wrong, right? And the it's closer than but Jerry actually came up with a great idea. I can tell you where it's more subjective questions. So we have 2 different groups answer the same question, and then when they rearrange, we have some discussion. So if you use the audience was right. You know, like and so then the grapple with it as well. So I can imagine that, or I can imagine having 2 groups do the same problem and then showing different approaches or different ways to get the solution. That's the answer. Yeah. And you come back and discuss what the right and then what you guys say. Usually I'm going around in the first saying before you get a little disseminate that information. No, that's my job. Related question. Yep. I'm okay. After my website. Okay. And I have an image in there. And I have it in my right. To make it easier. Yeah, but they know I can solve one and then do something back. Right, so we get everybody back together. Okay, if everybody can go back where you started, we're going to sit down and I'm going to do one other activity that I do almost every day in my classroom. And it's perfect. I have what's there like, where's my comments? Whatever you say. So, in my classroom, what I tend to do, I call an interactive lecture. I do use PowerPoint and I lecture and I talk, but I intersperse it every 10 minutes or so with clicker questions, at least in my physics class. So I use iClicker extensively, but that's only a tool for getting at the sort of strategy, which is what I call a think, pair, share. So we're going to do a think, pair, share next. Instead of using iClickers, I'm actually going to do it super low tech. I have done it with just note cards where I make every student a set of A through E note cards and they just hold up the note cards so they can do private voting that way. You can use Kahoots, you can use clickers, there's tons of ways to get your students to respond. But here, for the sake of time, to make it easy, you're not going to do it privately, you're going to do kind of more public, but you're going to divide this thing into 4, and everybody will put their answer into one of the quadrants. So in a think, pair, share, what you initially do is give
your students a question. You ask them to think about it individually and give me a response. And I usually set a time of like 30 seconds to give a response, the initial one. Then I use a quick scan of the answer, so I'm just gonna look, but in my iClicker software, I can just quickly see. If 90% of the class has it right, I know we're good, we move on, okay? If it's less than that, then we pair up or we do small groups and then they discuss, and I give them a few minutes to discuss, and then we re-vote and I see where we're at. If it still doesn't look good, then I know I really have to take some more time to discuss that concept. We're really still struggling with that, and then I spend more time going over it. If after people have had a chance to discuss, we're above 90, then we can move on. Does that make sense? So we're gonna do something like that now. I picked some questions for you. Just you each vote in one of the quadrants. I'm gonna be able to scan it and see sort of where we're at. So here is your question. You may have heard that eclipses, solar or lunar, happen when the sun, earth, and moon are lined up in a particular configuration. We just recently had a solar eclipse. What is the correct configuration for a solar eclipse?
So each person votes on one of the quadrants.
Yeah, so you pick a quadrant, you vote, someone else picks, and write it big, so then you're gonna hold this up and I'm gonna scan and see where we're at as a class. Each person's gonna write it in one quadrant. I want everybody to write it. Okay, good, I can see that. So we just pick quadrants. You put one in one, you put one in a different one. I just wanna be able to see where everybody's at. Okay, you got about 15 seconds left. Everybody vote in one quadrant. So you pick a quadrant, you pick a quadrant, you pick one. We're all doing this individually. I'm trying to see where we're at individually right now. So hold it up. This is like me looking at my clicker screen. Okay. All right. That's where they're at. That's where Dr. is at. Okay, 90% or more of you got this one right. We're not going to do a pair on this one. Okay? So the correct answer is Earth, Moon, Sun. That's good. This is what a solar eclipse alignment is. That would be a lunar eclipse. If you had Moon, Earth, Sun. This is a solar eclipse. What about that one? Uh-oh. That's my friend Katie Mack posted. Something bad's happened if that comes up. So in my class, if 90% of you get it right on the first one, no discussion needed, we go on to maybe a more challenging question. So this configuration, Earth, Moon, Sun, occurs every new moon. But how often is there a solar eclipse somewhere on Earth, partial or total? Okay, again, vote individually. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to think. Vote for yourself in one of those quadrants, then you're going to hold it up and everybody at your table votes. Okay, hold up your whiteboard and everybody on your tables voted so I can see how your group is doing. I'll give you about 10 more seconds. Yeah. And we got those. Back table, it's back table voted. Front tables have their votes in. Okay, back table, have you voted back there? All right. Okay. We aren't doing so well with this one, okay? So, I'm going to have you now talk in groups for about 3 minutes. I'm going to give you one additional hint to maybe help spur the conversation based on where we're at. So take this hint and talk in your groups and see if you can maybe come up with a better answer this time. Maybe not. But just try to discuss it, see if this it's okay. It's all right.
I don't know. It doesn't have to be really much. I put
So Jessica's actually taking my class, so I'm hoping for the right answer there. So this time when you vote, if you want to each have your own vote, you can, or if your whole table agrees, you can just write one letter on the top. I'll let you do it either way. But if you're like, I want to vote different than my table, you can vote different than your table. Okay, take about 1 more minute to discuss and then answer your vote. And once you have a vote, just hold it up so I know your table's done discussing. All right, are we all ready? So hold up your answers. Got that too? Got that one? That one? This one? Are you guys all voted? You're good? They're sticking to their answers. Okay, so then at this point I would say, wow, I did not do a good job teaching. I really need to get back in there and talk about the alignment and why we get eclipses. And so I would show the right answer at this point and then take some time to lecture. So I could go into it, but we should probably just keep moving forward. But if you want to learn about it, I'm happy to do it. We can talk all about how that 5-degree tilt means the alignment only happens about 2, possibly 3 times a year, just depending on the lunar cycle and the solar cycle. All right, are there questions about think, pair, share? Okay, there was a question earlier about our whiteboards. So the physics department made these, or had these whiteboards made. You don't want to buy whiteboards individually this size, they're super expensive. You can go to Home Depot and they have this is like bathroom wall tile, and they'll cut it to size for you for free. I want to say we got like six of them made for like $10, and so then you can just kind of multiply that. It was super cheap, like $1 or less, or $1 or $2 a whiteboard. But if you really want the info, Scott Seagroves is our lab instructor, and he's the one that went and took care of all of this.
What size is this one?
Oh, I don't know what he got cut. Yeah, sorry. But you can just get these big boards, and they'll cut it to size, whatever size you want. And then if they get a little sticky, you can just take ethyl alcohol and clean them up really nicely at the end of every school year.
Very cool.
Yeah, they're great for solving physics problems on. Everybody works together. You all look at the thing. You can really work some stuff out.
Save trees too with that glass.
Absolutely. All right. I think we're ready to keep moving forward then. The last 5 minutes.
Wonderful. So the last item that we're going to gather from you is some closing feedback, some closing thoughts from you. And so on your table, you have a half sheet paper that was mentioned at the beginning. It's your exit ticket. Exit tickets can be utilized for a variety of different purposes. It could be that you have a question on there that you're testing, kind of like in an IFAC form, but more open-ended, to see, did students understand a topic? It could be what did you, as Jerry was talking about earlier, what was the most interesting thing that you learned today? It could be, you could do kind of a know, what, learn. What did you know when you came in? What did you have questions on? What do you want to learn more about? There are so many different ways that exit tickets can take form, whether you're asking them to actually regurgitate information back to you to see the depth of understanding of the lesson, or whether you're just trying to get some feedback from them. You can use this at the beginning of the year about pacing. You can give their feedback on different activities that you've done, their viewpoints. Surprisingly, I've used timers in my class, and I find that when I use timers, some of my students absolutely do not like them. And I don't find that out to the end of the year. So it's kind of a way to get some of that, student satisfaction survey information throughout the year. Be careful what you ask, because they will answer and then expect you to adapt it to that. But it's interesting to get that feedback, whether it's on the academic or it's on the class environment, the speed of the class, whatever. Yes?
Do you ever get feedback from the accessibility office about using timers in your classroom, like for your accommodated students?
I have not. I don't use the timers for things that are independent work activities so much as just to keep us on task when we're doing some of these group things. Although if you did something, that would be something to keep in mind. If you had an individual task and somebody had time and a half to complete tasks, you want to keep that in mind and not have that person feel, isolated or put on stage by having that extra time. So that's a good thought to keep in mind. Yes?
Is that ever an issue with group quizzes? Like sometimes students take quizzes and tests in different accommodations. Like do you ever have students that say, oh, I don't want to take the group quiz because I had an accommodation?
I have not. I have had students, when I tell them that we're going to do group quizzes, that's the one thing I have not had negative feedback on. They love it. Because my group quizzes are open book, open cell phone, and you just can't make them like the questions about the bearded dragon, where they just Google it. I mean, that was done intentionally for the purpose of our time together today. But when I do my group quiz questions, they're not things that they can just like, oh, yep, here's the answer. And one person can just run rampant and solve them all.
Yeah.
So you do have to still moderate your groups and, kind of walk around. And if you see somebody who is just hanging on to it and completing their strategies. So one strategy is that you shift. So for question number 1, if one person writes question number 2, somebody else writes question number 3, somebody else writes. So you can assign tasks to them, different ways that you can get others involved. But like with any group activity, you do need to kind of educate them on the expectations of the group work. So I find that the group quizzes, even those who don't do well, seem to get more involved in the group quiz than they do during other class activities. They like that time to interact with each other, and they may not be verbally participating, but they tend to be doing a lot of taking in. So if you're not prepared for class, you really don't know what's going on, it's a time that they're really soaking in that information. It's like, oh, now I know what I don't know, kind of a thing. They may not even know at first what they would like to ask because they're not prepared for class. But now they know what they don't know as they're leaving. So maybe you catch them again in office hours. Good questions. Others? I'll give you a minute to finish filling out your exit tickets. And exit tickets, when I give them, they are mandatory. And so you can do them like for completion points. They have to have something meaningful there. Sometimes I will say, give me 2 things you learned today, or what 2 things are you walking out of here still fuzzy on? So I might have some kind of quantifying statement there so that they just don't put nothing and share that ahead of time. This is the expectation for the set to gain points. I put points to everything because if I don't, then students don't engage at the same level. So even if it's completion points, it has to be meaningful completion. And exit tickets always have points in my class. So you may find that you don't have to do that. Your students may be greatly motivated, and that's fabulous. I haven't had those yet. Yes.
The clicker is still commonly used, or people going more to something simpler like the whiteboard?
So science and chemistry use them extensively. I don't know about biology, but I would love to see more people using them because then there's just more of them on campus and people can have them from their neighbor. Like they're $30 on Amazon, maybe it's $35 now. But once you buy it, you can just pass it off to anybody. You can even share it with your roommate as long as you coordinate the handoff so that you get it. They can be registered to multiple people for each class. In a class, you can only have 1 per person, but I think they're really useful because they're so easy to use. The interface is so simple. You don't have to be loading up another website. I don't know, I love them, so.
Does iClickers have an app for phone?
They do.
So they don't have to buy the clicker?
You can do that. I don't use phones. I don't let them have phones in my classes. I'm old school. I find that they're too distracted. They might say they have the phone on for an iClicker response, but they're actually texting their friends or on Instagram. I don't want to mess with that. So I have a strict no cell phone policy.
But there is an app, you have to pay for that too, so you don't have to wait until.
You don't have to pay once you have it though. Like if you have a clicker and you give it to your friend, they don't have to pay to register it. They just register it on the fly in the classroom. And so once the clicker's bought, it's pretty low cost then to pass around.
So clickers are definitely one option. There are lots of other tools out there like Kahoot, which is a free online tool. And then I've just been starting to use clickers. So you print out, or you can purchase for $20 on Amazon at cost of $40. But they're cards, and they have kind of like a QR code look to them. And the orientation, they have ABCD on your card, and you just turn it. And then I just take my iPad and I scan the class, and I've got all my answers. And so that's free. And you can print out the little QR code things if you want. And then you just assign, so like I make a roster. So John is number 1, Jerry is number 2, and so on. You could use that for attendance. So I think there's so many options for us. And the idea of, do we want to use the iClickers, you know, more across campus would be a great discussion to have sometime, to see what tools are people using. So lots of options. Any other questions? Yes, what is POGO?
It's a type of project-oriented group interactive learning. It's in chemistry in particular, they really developed that. But I think that style of sort of giving students problems to work on to learn the chemistry is pretty applicable across other disciplines. They just call it different things.
It's creative learning.
Yeah. So we should wrap up so you can get to your next session and take a break. Please fill out the exit tickets for us so we have some feedback, and so we can give feedback to Jane and other people who want to do more active learning sessions throughout the year.
And you can leave your exit tickets on your table. We'll collect